Okay, and send out a notice. Okay, I think we're ready to go. All right, everybody. Oops. Lights, camera, action. So, we're going to chant the prayers of the Lord Nishingadev as we usually do before our evening class right now, because of the conflicts that are going on in the world, and our prayers that Krishna will end these conflicts, or the people decide to end the conflicts, and people learn how to be compassionate to each other, and Lord Nishingadev will protect the devotees and protect everybody in this world, and ultimately will cleanse everyone's heart and allow us to see the spiritual realm. Okay, those are some of the reasons we're chanting the prayers of Lord Nishingadev. But let's chant them. Namaste, Nada Sringaya, Lada Lad, Dayane, Hiranyakashi, Purvakshaka, Jivatam Ganakalaye, Idona Singa, Adatona Singo, Yato Yamita Tona Singa. Vakira Swingo, Ritaye Singo, the Swingamadim, Jalanam Brapajoy, Swingamadim, Jalanam Brapajoy. Namaste, Nada Singaya, Nada Lad, Dayane. Kashi Purvachaga Shiratam Ganakalaye Itona Singa Paratona Singo Yato Yamitato Shinga Vakira Singo Daye Singo The Singavadim The Namra Joy. Coming up and rain and come to sing. Dalita, Irana Kasi Udanu Bringa. Isamadrita, Anahari Rupa, Takarisa, Ate. Kavakana Kamala Brain Kamaputas Sringa Dalita Ramyakasi Bhutanu Isavantrita Nanahuni Rupa Naina Ganesa Ate Naina Ganesa Prabhupada Jaya, Prabhupada Haribo, 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 Haribo. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paramahansa also Tada Satashi Shimad, His Divine Grace Abhaya Chalananda Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrind Ki Jai. Namacharya Shri Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shitwaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopi Gopinath Sayam Kund Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavanam Ki Jai. Maturam Ki Jai. Jagannath Swami Ki Jai. Yamunamai Ki Jai. Shrimati Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Samantiti Namate Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauramani Pracharante Nivashesha Shunyavadhi Paschatcha Deshata Rente. Okay, so we're going to continue with our study of the Sri Caitanya Caritamrta Antya Lila, chapter 2. And chapter 2 deals with several different subject matters, but we're going to deal pretty soon with the subject matter of Junior Haridas. So that's the next part of the chapter that's coming up. Okay. So, Omagana Timidanda Shah Gananjana Shilakaya Chaksuram Meditam Yena Tasmai Shigaravena Maha. I offer my respectful obeisances under the lotus feet of my spiritual master's divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada, saved me from the ocean of nescience and illuminated my heart with the torchlight of knowledge. Okay, so let's go on to the Sri Caitanya Caritamrta. So Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Alrighty, let's go. We can hear about Bhagavan Acharya first, I believe. Sakya Baba Kranta Chita Gopavatara Swarupa Goshani Saha Sakya Yavahara. He was fully absorbed in thoughts of fraternal relationships with God. That's Bhagavan Acharya. He was an incarnation of the coward boy, and thus his dealings with Sarup Damodar Goswami were very friendly. So Bhagavan Acharya is a great, great, great devotee of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but he's in the mood of a coward boy. Ekanta Bhave Ashriyachena Chaitanya Charana Majje Majje Prabhorateno Karena Nimantrana. He sought the shelter of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's lotus feet with full surrender. Sometimes they would invite the Lord to dine at his home. Garibata Kari Karena Vividavanjana Ekale Goshani Lana Karana Bhojana. Bhagavanacharya prepared varieties of rice and vegetables at home and brought the Lord there alone to eat. So generally, those who invited Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for dinner used to offer him the remnants of food that had been first offered to Lord Jagannath. Bhagavanacharya, however, instead of giving him the remnants of Lord Jagannath's food, prepared dinner at his home. In Orissa, food offered to Lord Jagannath is called prasadi, and that which is not offered to Lord Jagannath is known as amani, or garabhata, rice prepared at home. Tanrapita Vishahibara Shatananda Kana Vishaya Vimukacharya Vairagya Pradana. Bhagavanacharya's father, whose name was Satananda Khan, was an expert statesman, whereas Bhagavanacharya was not at all interested in the management of the state. Indeed, he was almost in the renounced order of life. Gopala Bhattacharya Nama Tanra Chota Bai Kashite Vedanta Pari Gela Tanra Tani. Bhagavanacharya's brother, whose name was Gopala Bhattacharya, had studied Vedanta philosophy at Benares and had then returned to Bhagavanacharya's home. During those days, as at present, Vedanta philosophy was understood through the commentary of Shankaracharya, which is known as the Sariraka Bhashya. Thus it appears that Gopal Bhattacharya, the younger brother of Bhagavanacharya, had studied Vedanta according to the way of the Shariraka Bhashya, which expounds the Mayavadi philosophy of the impersonalists. Acharya Tahare Prabhu Parim Laila Antaryami Prabhu Chite Sukana Paila. Bhagavanacharya took his brother to meet Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but the Lord, knowing that Gopal Bhattacharya was a Mayavadi philosopher, could not get much happiness from meeting him. Acharya Sambandhe Bhaye Kare Pratyabhasa Krishna Bhakti Vina Prabhura Nahayulasa. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu derives no happiness from meeting one who is not a pure devotee of Krishna. Thus, because Gopal Bhattacharya was a Mayavadi scholar, the Lord felt no jubilation in meeting him. Nevertheless, because Gopal Bhattacharya was related to Bhagavanacharya, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu feigned pleasure in seeing him. In other words, just to be a gentleman, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu made believe that he was happy to see him, but he wasn't, because he was an offender. Swarupa Goswami Rehacharya Kahe Aradhine Vedanta Padiya Gopala Saiche Ekan He. Bhagavanacharya said to Swarup Damodar, Gopal, my younger brother, has returned to my home, having concluded his study of Vedanta philosophy. Sabe mele asa shunivasya ihara stane prema krodakari swarupa balaya vachane. Bhagavanacharya requested Swarup Damodar Goswami to hear from Gopal the commentary upon the Vedanta. Swarup Damodar, however, somewhat angry because of love, spoke as follows. Buddhi Brashta Haila Tumhara Gopalera Sange Mayavada Suri Pare Upajila Range. You have lost your intelligence in the association of Gopal, and therefore you were eager to hear the Mayavada philosophy. Vaishnavahana Yeva Sariraka Vasha Shune Sevya Sevaka Bhava Chadi Apanare Ishvara Mane. When a Vaishnava listens to the Sariraka Bhashya, the Mayavadi commentary upon the Vedanta Sutra, he gives up the Krishna conscious attitude that the Lord is the master and the living entity is his servant. Instead, he considers himself the Supreme Lord. Phew, very dangerous. The philosophers known as Kevaladvaita Varis generally occupy themselves with hearing the Sariraka Bhashya. A commentary by Shankaracharya advocating that one impersonally considers oneself the Supreme Lord. Such Mayavad philosophical commentaries upon the Vedanta Sutra are simply imaginary, but there are other commentaries of the Vedanta Sutra. The commentary by Srila Ramanujacharya, known as Srivasha, establishes the Vishishtadvaitavada philosophy. Similarly, in the Brahma Sampradaya, Madhvacharya's Purna Pragya Bhashya establishes the Shuddha Dvaita Vada. In the Kumara Sampradaya, or the Nimbarka Sampradaya, Sri Nimbarka establishes the philosophy of Dvaita Vada. In the Parijata Sodhava Bhashya, and in the Vishnu Swami Sampradaya, or Rudra Sampradaya, which comes from Lord Shiva, Vishnu Swami has written a commentary called Sarvajna Bhashya, which establishes Shuddha Advaita Vada. A Vaishnava should study the commentaries on the Vedanta Sutra written by the four Sampradaya Acharyas, namely Sri Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Vishnu Swami, and Nimbarka. For these commentaries are based on the philosophy that the Lord is the master and all living entities are his eternal servants. One interested in studying Vedanta philosophy properly must study these commentaries, especially if he is a Vaishnava. These commentaries are always adored by Vaishnavas. The commentary by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is elaborately given in the Adi Lila, Chapter 7, Text 101. The Mayavad commentary, Sadhirakyavasha, is like poison for a Vaishnava. It should not be touched at all. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur remarks that even a Mahabhagavat, or highly elevated devotee, who has surrendered himself unto the lotus feet of Krishna, sometimes falls down from pure devotional service if he hears the Mayavad philosophy of the Sadhirakyavasha. This commentary should therefore be shunned by all Vaishnavas. Now you may say, wow, sounds pretty heavy, this commentary. I mean, what does it have that causes people to fall down, people to get depressed? I mean, what is it? Well, it's an offense against the person we love. Who is that person? Not your children, not your wife. You should love them also. But but Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Radharani. And we love them. And if someone says that they don't exist, ultimately, they're just a figure for the Brahman, which will ultimately they don't exist. That's actually a great offense. And if someone embarks upon a pseudo-philosophical, illogical path to try to prove that philosophy, then that's a great offense too. And if one tries to understand it, it's a great offense. Mahabhagavata ye Krishna pranadana yara mayavada shavane chitta avasya fire tanra. The Mayavad philosophy presents such a jugglery of words that even a highly elevated devotee who has accepted Krishna as his life and soul changes his decision when he reads the Mayavadi commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. It is so contaminated. Not because it is so elevated and erudite, that's not the point, but because it is so offensive that one's mind becomes polluted. If you hear offenses against Vaishnavas, if you hear offenses against the Supreme Lord, it just pollutes the mind, puts doubts in the mind. Okay. Acharya kahe amasabara Krishna nishta chite amasabara manavasha nare pirayate. In spite of Sarup Damodar's protest, Bhagavan Acharya continued, we are all fixed at the lotus feet of Krishna with our hearts and souls. Therefore, the Sadhirakyavasha cannot change our minds. Surupakahi tatapi mayavada shravane chit brahma maya mitya ematra shune. Sarup Damodar replied, nevertheless, when we hear the Mayavad philosophy, we hear that Brahman is knowledge and that the universe of Maya is false, but we gain no spiritual understanding. Jiva jnana kaplita kishvare sakalai jnana yahara shavane bhaktera pate mana prana. The Mayavad, the philosopher, tries to establish that the living entity is only imaginary and that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is under the influence of Maya. Hearing this kind of commentary breaks the hardened life of a devotee. You know, if you love someone, that's what happens. Srila Damodar Goswami wanted to impress upon Bhagavan Acharya that even though someone firmly fixed in devotion to Krishna's service might not be deviated by hearing the Mayavada Bhasha, that Bhasha means commentary, that Bhasha is nevertheless full of impersonal words and ideas such as Brahman, which represent knowledge, but which are impersonal. The Mayavadis say that the world created by Maya is false, and actually there's no living entity but only one spiritual effulgence. What a stupid idea. They further say that God is imaginary, that people think that of God only because of ignorance, and that when the Supreme Absolute Truth is befooled by the external energy Maya, he becomes a jiva or living entity upon hearing all these nonsensical ideas from the non-devotee. A devotee is greatly afflicted, as if his heart and soul were broken. Yeah, because he loves Krishna. It's actually a nonsensical philosophy. Why is it? Because it says here that the Absolute Truth is, the Mayavadis believe the Absolute Truth is befooled by the external energy Maya. So if the external energy Maya can befool the Absolute Truth is not the Absolute Truth because it's not all-powerful. Maya's all-powerful, so we should worship Maya. And in India, many people do worship Maya. There are many Durga worshippers in India. So, worship Maya if you want. I'm not going to worship Maya. I'm going to worship the boss of Maya, and that's Krishna. Krishna is Surya Samabhaya Haya Andhakara. Maya means forgetfulness of Krishna, and Krishna is like the sun. With the sun, there is no darkness. And when there's darkness, there's no sun. Lajabaya Panacharya Monaha Ila Aradina Gopale Re Deshe Pataela. Thus Bhagavan Acharya, greatly ashamed and fearful, remained silent. The next day he asked Gopala Bhattacharya to return to his own district. Get the H-E-double-L out of here, Gopal. Yeah, he was intelligent. Even if someone's your brother or sister or mother or whatever, if they're saying something that's blasphemous to someone you love, then that's it. Get the hell out of there. And if they like someone you love, then you like them. And that applies if the someone you love is superior to you or the someone you love is inferior to you. I mean, for example, today I was taking a walk. And as I was taking a walk in the park here, there were two ladies walking a dog, a little poodle. And as I passed them, I said hi, and I said, "What a nice dog." And they looked at me with the glance, and they said, "You are such a nice person, because you love the entity that we love, but a nice dog." And also that can be applied like in relationship to Krishna and his devotee. If we actually please Krishna's devotee, and Krishna's devotee is Krishna's dog, then Krishna becomes pleased. As we chant every morning, Yasha Prasada Bhagavad Prasada Yasha Prasada Nagati Katopi. One who pleases the spiritual master pleases the pure devotee. He pleases Krishna, and one who doesn't please the pure devotee, the spiritual master, doesn't know where he goes. Nagati Katopi, he doesn't please Krishna. So Ekadina Charya Prabhure Kaila Nimantrana Gare Patakari Kare Vividha Vyanjana. One day Bhagavan Acharya invited Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu to dine in his home. Thus he was preparing rice and various types of vegetables. So this is the heavy story we're getting into now. Chota Harirasa Nama Prabhura Kirtaniya Tahare Kahena Charya Dakya Diya. A devotee named Chota Haridas used to sing for Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Bhagavan Acharya called him to his home and spoke as follows. Mora Name Siki Mahiti Mahitira Bhagini Stane Gya Shukla Chola Ekamana Anahama Gya. Please go to the sister of Shiki Mahiti. In my name, ask her for a mana of white rice and bring it here. In India, Shukla Chola white rice is also called Atapa Chola, rice that has not been boiled before being husked. Another kind of rice called Sira Chola, brown rice, is boiled before being husked. Generally, first-class fine white rice is required for offering to the deity. Thus, Bhagwan Acharya asked Chota Haridas or Junior Haridas, the singer in the assembly of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to get some of this rice from the sister of Shiki Mahiti. A mana is a standard of measurement in Orissa for rice and other food grains. Heavy story. Warning, warning. Mahitira Bhagani say Nama Maravi Devi Ridata Pashvini Hara Parama Vaishnave. Shiki Mahiti's sister was named Madhavi Devi. She was an elderly lady who always performed austerities. She was very advanced in devotional service. Prabhu Leka Karya Radhikara Gana Jagatera Madhye Patra Sadetina Jana. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted her as having formerly been an associate of Srimati Radharani. In the entire world, 3.5 people were his intimate devotees: Surupa Goswami, Raya Ramananda, Shiki Mahiti, Tina Tanra Bhagini, Arda Jana. The three were Sarup Damodar Goswami, Ramananda Roy, and Shiki Mahiti, and the half a person was Shiki Mahiti's sister. So that's a cultural thing. Don't worry. Don't ask me to explain this half business. That was a cultural thing there. Tanra Tani Tandula Magi Anila Haridasa Tandula Deki Acharyera Adika Ulasa. After begging the rice from her, Junior Haridas brought it to Bhagavan Acharya, who was very pleased to see its quality. Snehe Randila Prabhuda Priya Yevyanjana Dola Prasada Ada Chaki Lembu Salavana. In great affection, Bhagwan Acharya cooked varieties of vegetables and other preparations dear to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He also obtained remnants of food from Lord Jagannath and digestive aids such as ground ginger and also lime with salt. Majane Asisa Prabhu Bhojane Vasila Shalyana Deki Prabhu Acharya Puchila. At noon, when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to eat the offerings of Bhagavan Acharya, he first appreciated the fine rice and therefore questioned him. Uttama ana eta tandula kanhate pala Acharya kahe madhavi pasha magya nila. Where did you get such fine rice? The Lord asked. Bhagavan Acharya replied, I got it by begging from Madhavi Devi. Prabhu kahe Konyai Magya Nila Chota Haridas Sera Namacharya Kahila. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked who had begged the rice and brought it back, Bhagavan Acharya mentioned the name of Junior Haridas. Ana Prashamsiya Prabhu Bhojana Kahila Nijagrihe Asi Govindere Adadila. Praising the quality of the rice, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu partook of the prasadam. Then, after returning to his residence, he gave the following order to Govinda, his personal assistant. Aji haiteye mora akdapalniva jota hariraseihan asite nadiva. From this day forward, do not allow Chota Haridas to come here. Dwara mana kaila harirasa duki raila manhe ki lagia dwara mana keha nahi jane. When Junior Haridas heard that he had been ordered not to approach Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was very unhappy. No one can understand why he had been ordered not to come. So there's obviously something improper that occurred that we are not aware of. Because naturally, brahmacharis and others and sannyasis, they go begging door to door, and sometimes there's a lady at the door. So something improper happened. And we're not really informed of that in this particular context, in this particular chapter. So don't jump to conclusions. Tina dina haila haridasa karyupavasa Sarupadhyasi Puchila Mahaprabhura Pasha. Haridas fasted continuously for 3 days, then Swarup Damodar Goswami and other confidential devotees approached Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to inquire from him. Konaparada Prabhu Kaila Haridasa Kilagi Dwaramana Karyupavasa. What great offense has Junior Haridas committed? Why has he been forbidden to come to your door? He has now been fasting for 3 days. Prabhu Kahe Vairagi Kare Prakriti Sambhashana Dekitena Paranami Taharavadana. The Lord replied, I cannot tolerate seeing the face of a person who has accepted the renounced order of life, but who still talks intimately with a woman. So there was something else that went on other than just the begging. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur comments that Saralata, or simplicity, is the first qualification of a Vaishnava, whereas duplicity or cunning behavior is a great offense against the principles of devotional service. As one advances in Krishna consciousness, one must gradually become disgusted with material attachment and thus become more and more attached to the service of the Lord. If one is not factually detached from material activities but still proclaims himself advanced in devotional service, he is cheating. No one will be happy to see such behavior. Durvarandriya kare vishaya grahana dharavi prakriti hare amune rapi mana. So strongly are the senses connected to the objects of their enjoyment that indeed a wooden statue of a woman attracts the mind of even a great saintly person. The senses and the sense objects are so intimately connected that the mind of even a great saintly person is attracted to a wooden doll if it is attractively shaped like a young woman. The sense objects, namely form, sound, smell, taste, and touch, are always attractive for the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. Since the senses and sense objects are naturally intimately related, sometimes even a person claiming control of his senses remains always subject to the control of sense objects. The senses are impossible to control unless purified and engaged in the service of the Lord. Thus, even though a saintly person vows to control his senses, the senses are still sometimes perturbed by sense objects. Of course, if one is absorbed in Krishna and Krishna's pastimes, then those same senses become like, as Prabhupada gave the example, serpents that have their fangs depoisoned or, defanged or whatever it's called. Matra swashaduhi turva navikta shanavapravat palavanindriya gramo vidvam samapikarchati. One should not sit closely with one's mother, sister, or daughter, for the senses are so strong they may attract even a person advanced in knowledge. This verse appears in the Manu Samhita 2:215 and Srimad Bhagavatam 9:19-17. Shudra Jiva Sabha Markata Vairagya Kariya Indriya Charanabhule Prakriti Sambhashya. There are many persons with little in their possession who accept the renounced order of life like monkeys. They go here and there, engaging in sense gratification and speaking intimately with women. One should strictly follow the regulated principles, namely no illicit sex, no meat eating, no intoxication, no gambling. And in this way, one should make progress in spiritual life. If an unfit person sentimentally accepts vairagya or takes sannyas, but at the same time remains attached to women, he is in a very dangerous position. His renunciation is called markata vairagya, or renunciation like that of a monkey. The monkey lives in the forest, eats fruit, does not even cover itself with a cloth. In this way it resembles a saint, but the monkey always thinks of female monkeys and sometimes keeps dozens of them for sexual intercourse. This is called markata vairagya. Therefore, one who is unfit should not accept the renounced order of life. One who accepts the order of sannyas but again becomes agitated by sensual disturbances and talks privately with women is called dharma dhoji, or dharma kalanka, which means that he brings condemnation upon the religious order. Therefore, one should be extremely careful in this connection. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains the word markata to mean restless. A restless person cannot be steady, therefore he simply wanders about gratifying his senses, just to get praise from others, to get cheap adoration from his followers or people in general. Such a person sometimes accepts the dress of a sannyasi or babaji in the renounced order, but he cannot give up desires for sense gratification, especially for the association of women. Such a person cannot make advancement in spiritual life. There are 8 different kinds of sensual enjoyment with women, including talking about them, thinking about them. Thus, for a sannyasi, a person in the renounced order, talking intimately with women is a great offense. Sri Ramananda Roy and Srila Narottam Das Thakur actually achieved the most elevated stage of the renounced order, but those who imitate them, accepting them as ordinary human beings, fall under the influence of the material energy, for that is a great misunderstanding. Of course, Prabhupada here is quoting about Ramananda Roy because Ramananda Roy was able to deal with all the Devadasis, that is the dancers, the female dancers who dance for Lord Jagannath, and he was able to show them how to dance their mudras and eye gestures, and dance steps, and he was able to even touch them in doing so. And he was perfectly renounced because he understood that he was ultimately a gopi. The only way you can actually be renounced completely from the bodily concept of life is to identify yourself in terms of your spiritual identity, a spiritual body, which is not different than you, which is your spiritual identity. Renunciation doesn't come because of a negativity towards the things of this world, but renunciation comes because of changing one's own identification. If you identify yourself in terms of your spiritual body, then you can be perfectly renounced in this world, like Srila Prabhupada. We find that Srila Prabhupada, in the beginning days of the movement, he even had to show the ladies, at least the first lady, not the first lady in America, like Mrs. Biden. No, he had to show the first lady who joined the movement, first girl, not lady, who joined the movement, had to wear a sari. I mean, wow. Oh my God, I wouldn't even know how to wear a sari. I hardly know how to wear a dhoti, with to speak of wear a sari. So he had to show the first lady. So, because Prabhupada is fully identified with who he is in the spiritual world. So when one is able to, sarvapati, vinir muktam paratvaina nirmalam rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhakti, then one can do things like Ramananda Roy or Srila Prabhupada, but until then, don't even think about it. So what we have in ISKCON is that a sannyasi is not allowed to be alone with a member of the opposite sex. I mean, that's a rule. Of course, sometimes with one's mother. I mean, this is funny, because when I first joined the Krishna consciousness movement, I took this rule as in a very fanatical way. So when I went to see my mother, I would always bring 1 or 2 brahmacharis to protect me from my mother, so I would never be alone with her. And ultimately, my mother began to understand, you're bringing someone to protect yourself from me. And I was crazy. So, one has to really have some discrimination how to apply these different injunctions, these different statements, these different stories, these different examples. It requires some mature discrimination. And of course, when I was 20 years old, or 21 years old, I didn't have any mature discrimination. It was fanatical discrimination. It was not mature. So, anyway, so things have to be applied properly, intelligently. But the principle behind everything is that when one comes in contact with the sense objects, then one can lose one's mind, as the Bhagavad Gita says, Jaito Vishakpumsam Sangos Tesha Pajayate Sangat Sanjayate Kama Kama Krodha Pajayate. From contemplating the sense objects, then one gets attached, then one gets lusty, then one gets angry. So, therefore, one has to be very careful not to put oneself in a situation where one contemplates sense objects. And we're not only talking about the opposite sex, we're talking about any sort of sense object. Now, I know, let's say there were certain foods, let's talk about food as a sense object. There were certain foods that I was extremamente attached to years ago, like cheese, paneer, for those of you who don't know what cheese is. And I gave them all up all of a sudden. And as they say, cold turkey. I gave them up all of a sudden. And everybody was amazed. Ooh, how do you do that? Well, I'll explain how I did that. I did that because I had a purpose. What was that purpose? To live longer. Because those foods were offered to Krishna. I mean, there's nothing spiritually wrong with those foods, but it was damaging my health. And so I decided to do that. And so I told my little mind, don't contemplate those things anymore. And I don't. It doesn't bother me. If someone brings out a big piece of cheddar cheese or Limburger cheese, which I was never attracted to, then I just don't contemplate it. I mean, I look at it, I see it, Limburger cheese. Don't contemplate it means I don't think it's meant for me. I don't think I'm meant to enjoy it. You can see something and not contemplate, which is really interesting. You can actually be aware of something and not contemplate it, because if you don't think that I could possess it or enjoy it, then there's no more contemplation. You're just observation. You're just observing something. So I think that's a really important principle. So anyway, something happened with Junior Haridas that's not precisely spelled out in this particular story, but he was in a secluded place and he did do something wrong or contemplate something wrong or became attached or something happened wrong. Etakai Mahaprabhu Abhyantare Gela Goshani Raveshadeki Sabimona Kaila. After saying this, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu entered his room. Seeing him in such an angry mood, all the devotees fell silent. Adadine Sabe Mele Prabhuda Charvine Hadidasa Lagi Kichu Kaila Nivedane. The next day, all the devotees together approached the lotus feet of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu to submit an appeal on behalf of Junior Haridas. And this also indicates that in a religious organization, the standard has to be very, very high for the leaders. Very, very high, or else everything falls apart. Apaparada Prabhu Karaha Prasada Eve Shiksha Haela Nakarive Aparada. Haridas has committed a small offense, they said. Therefore, O Lord, please be merciful to him. Now he has received a sufficient lesson. In the future, he will not commit such an offense. Prabhu Kai Mora Vasha Nahi Mora Mana Prakriti Sambhashi Vairagi Nakari Darshana. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, my mind is not under my control. It does not like to see anyone in the renounced order who talks intimately with women. Nijakarye Whoops, someone sent a message. We'll answer that later. Nijakare Saha Yaha Sabe Chadavrita Kata Punayadi Kama Nadeki Heta. You should all tend to your respective engagements. Give up this useless talk. If you speak in this way again, I shall go away and you will no longer see me here. Phew, he's very heavy about this. Eta shuni sabe nija karne hastatia nija karye sabe gelata utiya. Hearing this, all the devotees covered their ears with their hands, got up, and went about their respective duties. Mahaprabhu Majjana Karite Chale Gela Pujana Nayayahi Mahaprabhura Lila. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also left that place to perform his noon duties. No one could understand his pastimes. Aradina Sabe Paramananda Puri Stane Prabhuke Prasanakara Kaila Nivedane. The next day, all the devotees went to Sri Paramananda Puri and requested him to pacify the Lord. Tabi Puri Goshani Eka Prabhustane Haila Namaskari Prabhutanre Sambrame Vasaila. Paramananda Puri thereupon went alone to the residence of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. The Lord, after offering him obeisances, seated him by his side with great respect. Puchila Kiyangda Yena Haila Gamana Haridase Prasadalagi Kaila Nivedana. The Lord inquired, "What is your order? For what purpose have you come here?" Paramananda Puri then submitted his prayer that the Lord show favor to Junior Haridas. Shunaya Kahina Prabhu Shunaha Goshani Sabhavaishnava Nana Tumi Rai Tane. Hearing this, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, "My dear Lord, please hear me. It is better for you to stay here with all the Vaishnavas. More Agna Hoya Muniyana Alanata Ekale Rahivatana Govinda Matrasata." Please give me permission to go to Alalanatha. I shall remain there alone. Only Govinda will go with me. Eta Bali Prabhu Yadi Govinde Bolaila Purire Namaskara Kari Uttiya Chalila. After saying this, the Lord called for Govinda, offering obeisances to Paramananda Puri. He got up and began to leave. Aste Vyaste Puri Goshani Prabhu Age Gela Anunaya Kari Prabhure Gari Vashaila. In great haste, Paramananda Puri Goswami went before him and with great humility persuaded him to sit down in his room. Tamara Yecha Kara Swatantra Ishvara Kevaki Balite Hare Tomorrow Apara. Paramananda Puri said, "My dear Lord, Chaitanya, you are the independent Supreme Personality of Godhead. You can do whatever you like. Who can say anything above you?" Lokahita lagi tomara sava vyavahara ami sava nachani ambira hridaya tomara. All your activities are for the benefit of people in general. We cannot understand them, for your intentions are deep and grave. Eta bali puri goshani gela nijastane haridasastani gela sabhavakta gane. After saying this, Paramananda Puri Goswami left for his own home. Then all the devotees went to see Junior Haridas. Swarupa Goswami Gai Shuna Haridas Savi Tamara Hitavanchi Karaha Vishwas. Swarup Damodar Goswami said, "Please hear us, Haridas, for we all wish you well. Please believe this. Prabhu Hate Bhatikjache Swatantra Ishvara Kabu Kripa Karibena Yate Dayalu Antara." At present, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is persisting in his mood of anger because he is the independent Supreme Personality of Godhead. At some time, however, he will surely be merciful, for at heart he is very kind. Tumi hata kaila tanra hata seva dive snanabhojana kara apane kroda yabe. The Lord is persisting, and if you also persist, his persistence will increase. It is better for you to bathe and take prasadam in due course. His anger will automatically subside. Okay. And so, where's my pen? The marker. Anyway, I'll remember. Okay, so that's where we'll end today. And this controversial chapter of the Caitanya Caritamrta. So we're going to allow you to unmute yourselves. And we already have one comment here. From Jai Radhika. Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj used, Junior said, rigid principles of renunciation for us. However, is an innocent, dedicated devotees like Junior Haridas suffer in the process? No. Actually, Lord Chaitanya wanted to set a very, very strict standard so people would adhere. And obviously, something else happened with Junior Haridas that we're not aware of, first of all, and that Lord Chaitanya was aware of. And secondly, this was a pastime. There's an internal reason for this pastime. You simply look at the external reason, you're not going to fully understand everything. The internal reason was to develop the sense of vipralambha in relationship with Junior Haridas, so that he would ultimately rejoin the Lord in his spiritual body, which we're going to hear about later in the chapter. So sometimes Lord Chaitanya would say to a devotee, even not just Haridas, that I don't want to see, like with Mukunda. It happened like that during the early pastimes of Lord Chaitanya, because Mukunda associated with some, I guess, Mayavadis or whatever, non-devotees, and Lord Chaitanya said, I don't want to see the guy. And then when Mukunda basically said he was willing to wait for thousands of births to see Lord Chaitanya, when Lord Chaitanya made that particular comment, then finally Lord Chaitanya. So sometimes Lord Chaitanya will use an external situation as, I don't want to say excuse, but as a scenario to deepen the devotee's devotion to him. So there's several things going on simultaneously. If you simply look at the external thing, yes, there's one thing that actually we have to be very careful about contemplating sense objects, and a sannyasi should never be alone with a woman. I mean, that's, or intimate, like that. So Juna Haridas didn't actually suffer because his feeling chastised by the Lord and his feeling of separation they were symptoms of ecstasy. We cannot understand that from a mundane platform. Like, I would love to get chastised by Prabhupada. That would be extreme ecstasy if Prabhupada would chastise me. So there are things going on different levels. That's the point. And we see it on one level, it's like, boy, he's heavy in dealing with a situation. You know, you're thinking, is it appropriate he was so heavy? Well, you don't know all the details. And secondly, this is for Junior Haridasa's getting closer to Lord Chaitanya. You know, Lord Chaitanya was actually drawing him in, showing his extreme emotions. So this is an important point, a very important point. Okay, so Krishna Priya Devi Dasi,
Jai Gurudev,
who's just like Madhavi. You're just like Madhavi, an ancient, not
pretty ancient.
senior, not ancient. Oh my God.
So
So
you answered a lot of my point that I was going to bring up, but there's still another aspect that I was thinking about. Like, we know that when Arjuna became bewildered, it was like the Lord's arrangement for him to become bewildered, but actually he was Krishna's, eternal associate. So is it anywhere written or spoken by the acharyas that this was all arranged by the Lord because the Lord wanted to set that example, but that Junior Haridas was actually...
I don't know if it was arranged, but I mean, I don't know if it was written by the acharyas, but that's obviously the case. In the Gauragana Dashdipika, Junior Haridas is listed as one of the Lord's eternal associates. So this is, these are pastimes between the Lord and his eternal associates. You don't get to be Junior Haridas just because you're just a regular soul, conditioned soul like me. Yeah, so I haven't read anything by the other acharyas, but it's actually, there are things going on many levels like that we can understand.
Thank you.
Okay. Gopal Das.
Peace to my patience, Gurudev. I noticed that even though Lord Chaitanya rejected Junior Haridas for whatever time he did, the devotees didn't. The devotees went and pleaded with him to be patient and appreciated his qualities and didn't abandon him.
Yeah, so the devotees are more merciful than the Lord. That's another thing that's being proven there. So that's actually really interesting. Devotees are actually much more merciful than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's why you have to approach God through the devotees. And Lord Chaitanya didn't reject him either. He didn't say reject him. He said, I don't want to see him. And that not wanting to see him increased Haridas Thakur's devotion. Try to understand that. So it's not that, you just look at it from a mundane platform. It's not like that. Okay, next question is Shama Kushori Devi Dasi.
Okay. Gurudev, please accept my humble obeisances.
Haribol.
Yeah, my question is from yesterday's reading, Gurudev, that Pradyumna Brahmachari has been cooking for the Lord Nrsimhadev again after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu honored the prasadam. So I
Yeah.
was not understanding the mood of that devotee, why he was doing it again.
Why was doing it again? Because he had special attachment for Lord Nrsimhadev. Even though he knew philosophically that Lord Nrsimhadev and Lord Chaitanya are the same, then his special attachment and love for that form of the Lord, which was his worshipable deity, he could not refrain emotionally. There's a philosophical understanding, then is the emotional understanding. I mean, just like in many temples, they have three sets of deities. You have Gaurnitai, Radhakrishna, Sitaram, Lakshman, Hanuman, or Jagannath. It's not that you just offer to one set of deities, even though Krishna is the same Krishna on all the altars, but you all offer to all the sets of the deities. So this is somewhat of the same mood, that he was very attached to Lord Nrsimhadev, and even though philosophically he understood Lord Chaitanya is Krishna, Lord Chaitanya is Jagannath, Lord Chaitanya is Nrsimhadev, emotionally he couldn't deal with Lord Nrsimhadev not eating. I mean, just like I worship my Shalagram Shilas, but every day they're offering to Krishna in the temple too. So if I think, oh, they've offered to the deities in the temple, so I don't offer to my Shalagram Shilas because they've already eaten, they're in the temple, there's the same Krishna, so, let me get away with not offering to them, so it's the same thing. Okay, that's a good question.
Oh, thank you, Gurudev.
Thank you. And so Jai Radhika also said, yes, this happened with King Prataparudra, that Lord Chaitanya refused to see him, and it was for a very long time. And this, deepens a devotee's devotion when that happens. So I mean, Haridas Thakur was a pure devotee. I mean, who knows, what was going on, and, Lord Chaitanya. I mean, just like even look at an ordinary devotee, well, I'm not a devotee, but an ordinary devotee like myself, like Prabhupada left the planet in 1977. So if I think I want to see Prabhupada, I can't. So Prabhupada left, physically left, and so then the mood of separation has to be the impetus for my devotional service for many years. You may think, oh, Prabhupada was cruel by leaving, but that Prabhupada's leaving was not only because he left to go somewhere else, but his leaving was also to evoke the mood of Vipralamba in us and increase our dedication and meditation on his mission. Okay? So, with that in mind, difficult chapter. With that in mind, we'll see everybody tomorrow. Thank God I got through the chapter. Not through the chapter yet. We're not home free. So thank you all, and we will see everybody same time, same station tomorrow. All glories to His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada.